Admittedly, it's surprising that we're getting valuable information towards the war. Perhaps the most obvious reason for this is because this arc is centering around Samura and his daughter, and the implications of the war spread rather far. We know there's different versions, variations, and depictions of what that war looks like. Depending on where you stand, what your viewpoint is, and what side you're on, the viewing of that war perhaps is entirely different. As someone that has a very valuable perspective of this war that is rather revealing is Yura. We don't know why or how Yura has all of this information, but we need to set a groundwork. We need to set a point of reference depending on perspective. So a great way that this is done is by using Iori and Samura as the vessel to accomplish that. So we get information on where the Datanseki come from and why the war begins. From one perspective, an island appeared within the sea, and people came from that island alongside the stone. What's interesting is that the people from this island are actually immune to the Datanseki. Their bodies can handle it. They won't explode. A lot of the in-between of that is cut, and then the invasion begins. And during that invasion, obviously we have our 5 swordsmen and people wielding the enchanted blades, and somehow the Datanseki stones traversing from that secluded island to the mainland. That dark, anonymous void in between is very, very important. Once again, it's going to come down to perspective, and we are continuing to get more and more of it trickled in. Iori is struggling to remember what her father was like. It's taking a massive toll on her mental state. This makes sense. But the one thing that she does remember when it all comes together is the response to Samura, how people reacted to this quote-unquote hero. While on one side people are going to worship the swordsmen and Samura as being heroes, another large set are going to fear him, are going to consider him a murderer. And you would perhaps only ever have that disagreeable perspective is if the intention of this invasion and the war itself isn't actually clear. It's very easy to manipulate and to perceive a side as being either good or bad, but clearly in this situation it's very hard to tell who is actually right. And the government or the Kagurabachi or whoever is in control at the time could not provide propaganda to prop up their side to being the good guys. So you have a massive impasse right in the middle. Clearly from the normal viewing perspective, something was wrong, and these swordsmen that are hailed as heroes are also considered murderers and killers and horrible individuals, so much so that the one memory in the back of Iori's mind is her whole house being covered in graffiti and scribble and all of these horrible things being said about Samura and the family. So on one hand, being the daughter of Samura is a difficult task, and one that would have been very dangerous. Even just public reception would have made her life perhaps a living hell. So of course, this is where the memory swipe comes in to allow her to live a life away from the Samura name and the potential hatred that would come with it. I think having so many different perspectives, including Iori, to the war situation is very, very valuable. Hokuzono is playing it slow. While he's giving us information to work with and feeding it very delicately, he's still not giving everything, which is where our understanding of the story starts to take front center. Who do we want to believe? Should we believe Samura? Should we believe the perspective that has been told? Why was there an invasion to begin with? How did Chihiro's father come to understand the Datanseki stones, which is a foreign substance material, so quickly? Was this war just for resources? Did they just want the stones? Eventually we will dive into that and the catastrophic failure of what that war represents. If anything, it has created more and more problems, but clearly there is more to it in terms of initiation. One side has provoked, and with a mysterious substance that is incredibly powerful, it's hard to believe that it wouldn't be the mainland. Currently, that is the point, a confliction between perspective, and Iori sitting in the middle trying to balance her own. It's a very nice comparison between something major and something personal. That personal holds a lot of power. Iori is a very interesting character and someone that could really liven up the story, but it depends. Hokuzono could take her out of it and remove her because she doesn't really provide value in the terms of combat. But he could bring her into the fold and bring her under protection for the Masumi ninjas, away from the Kagurabachi and the Hishaku. If the story continues with Samura rather consistently, then having someone like Iori is incredibly beneficial, both purposefully if you ever wanted to use her as a vital piece to cracking Samura, which they were trying to take her away from but naturally you can't avoid, or if you want to use her as a backseated character alongside the likes of Cha. I say it perhaps depends on the length of the story. Currently, Chihiro has always been the center focus that steals a ton of spotlight, and a lot of other characters haven't really had their moment to shine. But eventually, if the story is long enough, we could move into different territories to expand on those characters and give them their moments. And I think a lot of people want to see that, something with Hakuri or Hiyuki, even Shiba, because we're so front loaded with Chihiro and telling this compelling narrative from his perspective, it's difficult to find time to explore other avenues. But in terms of length, we can't always focus on him, so if the story does open up further, Iori would be beneficial in the long run, and someone that we could explore alongside the other characters. Now, I like the idea of this hotel, but I didn't think it solely relied on brute force. A part of me originally believed that maybe it would be smarter to have some sort of barrier in place where magic or sorcery just could not be used anyway. Instead, it relies more so on a code of honor, really upholding the Switzerland title, that this place is a neutral zone for any and all, and that if you decide to use sorcery or cause a ruckus, the full force of the hotel will come down onto you. The difference and the bigger problem between having a barrier and code of honor is that if someone is powerful enough to go against the hotel, code of honor doesn't really matter. So you either have to be incredibly confident in yourself, confident that not a strong opponent would walk through those doors to tear it down, or confident that they would stick to the code of honor. This does not end well, because the two people in the very same hotel is Toto and Hiko. Already the hotel is onto their tail and threatening them to get out because Toto has teleported Hiko in. He does not have the enchanted blade. Obviously he can't draw it because of Samura. In terms of how the hotel operates, they're already on top of them. Hiko has none of this and kills the first person that approaches pretty effortlessly, but the guy does manage to respond and get his sword out. It's just that Hiko is better. I want to mention that the reason the hotel is confident in their ability to police and enforce the no sorcery rule is that everyone is a trained swordsman under a one sword style technique. These are very powerful individuals, and the lobby guy is the one leading the charge. Now, there is a lot of interesting ways that this can go. It'd be very weird for the entire hotel to be destabilized because of one powerful individual, which brings me back to the maybe you should have had a barrier rather than relying on your skill. But then again, Hiko can be somewhat of an anomaly. He is walking in here without an enchanted blade. So what we're going to get is a masterclass of him learning. And this is something that I've been very interested in seeing. Hiko is not trained, he's not skilled, but he's entirely reliant and talented when it comes to learning. Now, we just recently found out that Chihiro works in kind of a similar fashion, observation. So what we're about to see from Hiko is him most likely trying to copy and learn the one sword style that this hotel primarily uses. If he's able to understand it, pick it up, and weaponize it however he wants, he's going to be a menace to deal with. The interesting side of it is that I don't assume him to use it properly. He seems like a character that will learn to utilize the one sword style, but within his own cannibalistic way, something more experimental or monstrous. People may recognize the one sword style, but feel disrespected that he's not respecting that style. A similar thing can be said for Chihiro, mimicking the Ayato style from Samura. What we're boiling up to is a clash of learning. Chihiro is currently in the process of mastering the Ayato style in 24 hours within his vision, and just downstairs, Hiko is trying to obliterate everyone using a one sword style, which he might naturally pick up on. He needs to learn how to wield a sword anyway. This is the best battleground to do it. So by the end of it, there can be a clash here between Chihiro and Hiko on their new respected sword styles, but within their own cannibalistic version. That is a very exciting premise to end on. While they don't know that Chihiro is here, they are rapidly running out of time, but they're both progressing kind of at the same pace. Who comes out on top or who masters what first is going to be the biggest upper hand here. They need to protect, so they all can't go on the attack, which perhaps ushers the best platform for Chihiro to fight without an enchanted blade. But the exact same thing can be said for Hiko. These two will clash, and in a spectacular way.